All right, let's talk about the name that Stephen King buried inside the greatest horror story he ever told. We all know Pennywise the Dancing Clown, the red balloons, the storm drain, and that smile that's way too wide to belong to anything human. But what if I told you Pennywise isn't even his real name? What if the name that it whispers to itself in the dark isn't Pennywise at all, but Bob Gray? Yeah, Bob Gray. The most ordinary name you can imagine, and maybe the most horrifying for that exact reason. So here's where it gets wild. In King's novel, It introduces itself not just as Pennywise the Dancing Clown, but as Robert Gray multiple times. It says it proudly. It signs it as if that name actually means something to it. And that throws the whole mythology wide open, because it is supposed to be this cosmic being, this eldritch nightmare from a place beyond space and time, the Macroverse. Something that literally fell to Earth millions of years ago and dug itself into the soil that would one day become Derry, Maine. So why the hell would a creature that's older than human civilization call itself Bob Gray? That's like a god referring to itself as Jeff from accounting. Now, King never gives a straight answer, and that's the genius of it. Throughout the novel, there are whispers, newspaper clippings, ghostly photographs of a clown appearing throughout Derry's history. The early 1900s and 1800s, even earlier, sometimes that clown is named. Sometimes it's just there, lurking, smiling, and that's where the rabbit hole opens up. Fans have been arguing for decades. Was Bob Gray a real person, a real clown that maybe it absorbed? Or is Bob Gray just one of its masks, a human alias it cooked up to sound relatable, something that would make kids drop their guard long enough to die screaming? And that's the thing about it. It doesn't understand humans. It imitates us. Badly. Like some cosmic predator trying to do stand-up comedy without understanding the punchline. That's why Pennywise is so off. Too cheerful, too eager, too wrong. That's why the voice feels like a parody of friendliness. It's pretending. The joke's on us. But if you trace its history back, the story gets darker. According to King's lore, this thing has been here forever. Longer than the dinosaurs, longer than the oceans. It came crashing down in a meteor before humanity even existed, sleeping in the earth, waking every 27 years to feed on fear. That's its metabolism. Fear isn't just seasoning for it, it's the meal. And every cycle, Derry becomes a slaughterhouse. The 1700s, the entire town of settlers vanishes. 1851, a massacre at the ironworks. 1906, the Kitchener explosion. 1958, the Losers Club. 1985, the return. Every time it wakes up, the blood follows. And each time, it's like Derry itself helps it hide. Like the town is under some psychic hypnosis. You can't even say Pennywise's name in Derry without someone whispering shh. So before Derry, before the clown, what was it? That's the part that hits cosmic horror territory. King hints that it exists in opposition to something called Maturin, a cosmic turtle that represents creation and balance, while it represents destruction and consumption. That's biblical, that's mythic. But then suddenly, we're back to a clown making balloon animals in a sewer. That's the genius contrast, the ancient and the absurd. Now here's where Bob Gray becomes fascinating, because if you read the novel closely, it speaks with memories. It references eating humans, yes, but sometimes it speaks like a human. Like someone remembering their childhood, like someone who remembers tasting food, feeling rain. That suggests that at least some of what it is comes from human experience. So what if it didn't just invent the name Bob Gray? What if it stole it? What if there really was a Robert Gray in the 19th century Derry, a traveling clown, a drifter, maybe a killer who crossed paths with something he didn't understand? What if it devoured him and absorbed his memories, his personality, his voice, his grin? And because of that, it keeps wearing him long after the man is gone, like a haunting that goes both ways, the monster haunting the man and the man haunting the monster. Tim Curry got that. Back in the 1990 TV miniseries, his Pennywise wasn't some CG monstrosity. He was human, almost too human. That's why he's still terrifying decades later, because you can almost imagine meeting him. That's Bob Gray. The smirk, the old-fashioned humor, the beep beep Richie taunting. That's not cosmic horror. That's the ghost of a man still having fun, scaring children to death. The miniseries nailed that human face of evil. Like Curry's grin could drop any second and reveal something ancient underneath. Fast forward to Andy Muschietti's films. Bill Skarsgard took the concept and flipped it. His Pennywise isn't pretending to be human anymore. The eyes move separately, the smile stretches too wide, the voice cracks, and then drops into something unearthly. His costume looks like it's from another century, a patchwork of eras, almost as if the creature can't remember what decade it's supposed to be from. And that's the beauty of it. Skarsgard's Pennywise is what happens when Bob Gray's ghost finally rots away and the thing beneath starts to show through. But what's wild is that even Skarsgard in interviews said the name Bob Gray came up during his prep. He read the novel, he studied the name, and he built Pennywise as something that believes it's human, until it suddenly remembers it's not. The duality, that snapping between funny clown and God from hell, that's the whole point. Stephen King has danced around the question for 40 years. He's been asked, "Who is Bob Gray?" and he just shrugs and smiles. He said, "Even I don't know everything about Pennywise." Think about that. The author of the monster admits he doesn't fully understand what he created. That's not laziness, that's power. That's myth. That's what gives the story life beyond its pages. Because now, even King is just another person haunted by his own creation. And now, almost 40 years later, we're going back to Derry. Welcome to Derry is here, and going straight for the question King never answered. They're diving into the early 1900s. They're showing us the birth of the clown, the foundation of Derry, the cycle before Georgie, before the losers, before anyone ever said Pennywise. Bill Skarsgard is back. The Muschiettis are behind it, and the part of the reason they got Skarsgard back was because they're going to explore Bob Gray persona. Maybe even show the moment it first put on the makeup. Maybe even, and this is where it gets awesome, show the man that it took the name from. And that's the full circle terror of it all, because if there really was a Bob Gray, then Pennywise isn't just an alien monster. He's a ghost wearing skin. He's the echo of human being that got consumed, digested, and replayed endlessly. That's why he dances. That's why he jokes. That's why he smiles. It's not because the monster finds it funny. It's because somewhere deep inside the deadlights, Bob Gray still does. When you think about it that way, Pennywise isn't just a killer clown. He's a mirror. He's us, the part of humanity that finds joy in cruelty, that laughs at pain, that hides horror behind a smile. Maybe that's why King left it vague, because the second you define Bob Gray, he stops being scary. But as long as you don't know, he can be anyone. He can be under your street, behind your smile, or maybe he's still whispering in Derry's sewers, waiting for the next cycle. So yeah, Pennywise, the cosmic spider, the eater of worlds, the deadlights, whatever name you want. All of that's terrifying. But the part that freaks me the F out is the name in the dark. The one that shouldn't mean anything, but somehow means everything. Bob Gray, the man who never existed and somehow never went away.